So, Raeesa, what are your thoughts on this idea? What do you think is the difference between intentional parenting and to get entrenched or entrapped in parenting? Curious to know.
So I think I like that topic when you told me it, because I've definitely been there. I feel like I know.
We've all been there.
And even I was thinking about it earlier today, that I'd say probably definitely the first whole year, and going into the second year, I was just engulfed in parenting. And now, alhamdulillah, it's like there's some days that you feel more like that, and some days where you're a bit more like intentional, or a bit more, you're able to manage differently. But
right.
I think when you're engulfed, it's like, for me, I describe it as you're overwhelmed, but you're also like trying to fight what's going on, or you're always going, everything's coming at you, and you're kind of, responding, or you're just trying to survive and keep your head above water.
Right.
And yet, definitely for me, like, I think when I first became a mom, that was pretty much like, it's like being hit by a bus, and just, overwhelmed a lot of the time, and trying to find my feet. So, I think when you become more intentional, or you start to make that shift, which a lot of people do, alhamdulillah, you start to accept what's just going on, rather than trying to always trying to do something else, or always trying to like be something else. You start to just accept the time that you're in, and the season, the phase that you're experiencing, and do the best with that instead, rather than thinking, oh my God, what's going on? I was supposed to do this, and this, and I can't. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. Just this appreciation that, when we are blessed with children, when we have a child, when the child is born, we are born too, like as a mother. And because before that, we were not mothers, right? And just that acknowledgement that just like my child is born, a mother is born, a father is born, and they need to grow in that role too, in their understanding of motherhood or fatherhood, and go through that process where they learn on the job, right? Like it's probably the most high stakes job, and probably the most demanding job out there, and also the most rewarding, and the kind of thing that really extracts everything out of you. Like you really are stretched in all kinds of directions, and but at the same time, we have so little preparation. Even if you go and do some classes here and there, and a few things here and there, and I did that, and I remember feeling within a few weeks that I'm not prepared for this, like it's quite a bit. So and the other thing is that it takes a while just to find our feet, and just when you think that you're getting it, your child is growing, so they're ever evolving, their needs are evolving, they are a different child now. So the toddler needs, they grow out of it, and now they have their preschooler needs, and then now they have their other needs. Just today I was talking to my son, and he was like, I don't know, Mama, I'm feeling a little confused. So I don't know, I don't know why I'm feeling like this. And I'm like, maybe you're going through that transition from pre-teens to teens. And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm not prepared for that, Salah. I mean, there's always a new phase. There's always some learning to do, and growing into a new role or a new expectation within our relationship. So, so that's another thing. It's an evolving thing.
Yeah, and you just have to kind of accept that as well, that things are always going to change. So when you feel like you've grasped what's going on in this stage, like it happens when you've got young children like me, it happens very quickly. Like, within 6 months, that child is quite different, or when they've developed this new understanding or this new skill or whatever it is, they start to behave differently, they start to respond differently, and it can sometimes, it can knock you, or it can catch you off guard. And again, it's like you said, you just need to accept that, I'm learning on the job, and not be too harsh, and not kind of again become engulfed, like, can I even do this? Am I even capable? And just accept that you're still learning as well, especially when it's the first child. Like,
Yeah,
for me,
you make a lot of
everything with
mistakes.
my eldest, yeah, it's like it comes at you sometimes, and you're like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here, but
Yeah,
alhamdulillah, we're just learning. So
yeah. And I think it's worth acknowledging that, people who have like 4 or 5 children, or they have children who have grown, they almost always will turn around and tell you that, take it easy, you know,
yeah,
just
yeah,
just don't fret so much, don't worry so much, don't be like, um, everybody asks us to slow down. And I know when I'm in the program, when I'm mentoring moms, that's the first thing that comes out of my mouth, like, just slow down, because there is so much that we miss in that pace. And I personally think that this engulfed with the main difference between engulfed in parenting and intentional parenting for me personally is that a person who's engulfed in something, they're kind of like just reacting. So like, imagine a mom who's like kind of like swamped, and completely caught up in this. Her morning, if you imagine her morning, she wakes up feeling tired. She's getting up, she's thinking, okay, what's my checklist, and then while she's doing that, there's already hungry kids crying for breakfast, and then she goes and does that, and then she has to get to the dishes, and then she has to get to this and that, and then the lessons, oh my god, this, and it's like a frantic pace, right? So
mm,
when I think of a mom who's engulfed in parenting, I imagine almost like a hamster in a wheel, like constantly running, but not really quite getting anywhere. It's
mm,
like she's just doing things reactively.
yeah,
Whereas a person who works with intention may not be having that kind of a fast-paced rigor or lifestyle, but or
mm,
they may be moving really slowly, but then
mm,
whatever they do, they put thought behind it, and they know what is to come, or they have a good awareness of what is to come, and where is my energy best
mm,
used.
mm,
They also have this space between, like, they have a sense of personal boundary. I think an intentional
yeah,
parent is not engulfed, not because they have less work or more work, but because they have those personal boundaries defined well, and a sense of direction clearly defined, and an anticipation of what is to come. Like, they wouldn't do things reactively. So I'll give an example. Like, imagine a mom who's trying to do everything, because she has this internal rush almost to get through things. Like, I need to do this and that and the other, and and this list of, this big list that she has in her mind makes her almost like unstoppable, like, this freight train which has just taken off and it cannot slow down. Like, she herself cannot slow herself down, because um and I've seen this in moms, like, I'm seeing this from
mm.
experience, that it's almost like they themselves cannot stop or
Mm.
pause.
I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there too, where they can pause and notice, wait a minute, why am I doing this again? Or why is this important? Like, there's almost like this, there's no question in the mind. There's
Yeah.
no time to
Mm,
question. There's no time to take notice of her own thoughts,
mm,
of her own
mm,
emotions. What is making me compulsively do
mm,
things? She
mm,
doesn't have that space. Before you
mm,
can have the physical space, or the slowing down is what, you're asking for space to be created. Before you can have that, that space has to even be created in our minds.
mm,
And
mm,
most people are just not there
mm,
mentally.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you think, Raeesa?
I think it was interesting. A lot of that sounds like me. It still sounds like me some days as well. Like,
Yeah,
just
we all,
responding. And I think sometimes with young kids, it's inevitable because what
yes,
they throw at you is just their urges, and their needs are so kind of in that moment.
Yeah.
But I think for me, what's helped me on the journey is sometimes it's about being intentional even in those moments. So like you said,
Yes.
maybe it's breakfast, or maybe it's just like, the most simple thing that your kid wants to do this, or like the need of the day is like, you have to just follow what the children are demanding. But if you have enough, insight, or enough kind of space, I guess, as you said, just to make some intentions, or just to actually
Yes.
think, well, I have to accept this is how this day is going to go. So like for me
Yes.
at the moment, like we just experienced, like there's a baby in the mix. He
Yes.
might wake up, some days he's not napping, some nights he's not sleeping, and you're either in that and you're just like, oh my gosh, I wanted to do this, I can't do that, like what is going on here? And you kind of start to
Right.
get really, flustered, flappy, and you go into that mode of becoming engulfed.
Right.
Um, and I think for me, when you can stop and just say, okay, this is going on, this is the day. I can't really do too much about that. So, refresh some intentions and just try your best. Like, more and more now, I say to Allah, well, this is what you've given me. So,
Yes.
help me to do the best. And in that sense, even though you're not putting up worksheets and you're not doing all these like activities you can take pictures of, you're really connecting with what's going on, and it's bringing like blessing, or it's doing the best in that moment. And
Yes.
that's an important example for your kids. So if you can say that kind of stuff out loud, like my eldest hears me every so often, like I'm driving and the baby's screaming, and I'm just like, Allah help me to drive carefully, Allah help me to get to where and I literally, like, I mean it. I'm like,
Yeah.
please, I don't want
Yep.
to crash the
Yep.
car.
Yep.
But like he can hear me, and that's the best I can do. Like I can
Yeah.
either become panicky and I can be like, everyone quiet, and they still won't be quiet, or I
Yeah.
can think, well, what example can I set in this moment? How
Yes.
can I like really do the best in this moment? And
Yes.
to me, that's going from like engulfed to just intentional. Make it
Absolutely.
intentional.
Actually, what you just said, pretty much is like a beautiful picture of what does an intentional parent do versus a person who is engulfed. The person who's engulfed has a hard time accepting their reality. The number one thing that we can do, and this is something that we are actively doing right now in the program, where like acceptance, this, and this as a Muslim, it's such, it should be the natural progression anyways. We are either in the state of gratitude or in the state of sabr, right? Like shukr and sabr, those are the two things that we go back to. So can we have sabr, like this is my circumstance right now? And sabr doesn't necessarily mean like you have to have a certain type of hardship or a certain type
Yeah.
of difficulty or a certain type of challenge. This is sabr. This is how you practically apply it in your life. Like, I have a young baby and I have all these things to do. What I need to do first is accept that this is my day, this is my situation. I intended this, and Allah rewards even for intention. That is, if my expectation from the day is not exactly matching what is my current circumstance, I say I believe in qadar Allah.
Mm.
I believe in qadar Allah. Allah knows, Allah's the doer of the things as much as he's the knower of things. So he knows, he knows my state. He also is, he has control. And when I made that intention, I'm already rewarded. The second thing is, once you accept that this is my circumstance, you shift your focus to, now what can I do? Now what can I do in this situation? Now this is my ground reality. What can I do now? Now for this to happen, a person has to have something called as mindfulness. Mindfulness has become this fancy word that everybody talks about, but how do we apply it in our life? Mindfulness is basically just coming back to the present. Like, hey, I'm not going to keep imagining that curriculum that's not going to get finished. And I'm on the seventh chapter, and today was supposed to be, I should have been finishing the eighth chapter, and look what happened. Look, my toddler spilled the milk, and now there's a mess, and I can't do this and this. When we have all of that running in the background and there's no acceptance, suddenly that thing becomes like this high pressure, stressful thing. that is already putting you like 4 steps behind and making you feel defeated. The thing that helps next is to kind of create some distance between your agenda, your plans, your thoughts, your aspirations, and yourself. Like, wait a minute, why am I doing this in the first place? It's to educate my child. What can I do in this moment? I have this moment, and this moment is a gift from Allah. What can I do in this moment? That's the only thing I have got, actually, right? So you begin there. You have to really be willing to part with your agenda, part with your aspirations. Like, I wanted my child to be behaving in a certain way by this age. Let go of that. This is your child, this is your unique child, and he has his own unique journey. We are so like holding on tight to our own ideas in our head, or our own need for validation sometimes, our own emotions. We feel vulnerable, right? Especially for home educators, when our children are not making a progress, and we know we are on the spot and everybody's out there to judge us, we feel this intense pressure and we feel vulnerable, right? That's an emotion. Now, what do we do with that emotion? Acknowledge that it's going to be there. It's part of the deal. It's going to be there, but who's with me?
Yeah.
Allah's with me, and Allah's sufficient for me. Like, remind yourself that I have to do my bit, and then the results are anyways going to come from Allah. So why fret? It immediately puts you at peace. Like, a Muslim gets peace through submission. So when you submit to that moment and say that, Allah, I'm willing to be vulnerable. Allah, I'm willing to accept whatever is the present moment. I'm willing to do what it takes. I will work hard, and the rest is up to you. And then you renew your intention, just like you said. You renew your intention. Okay, what can I do in this moment? I couldn't do X, Y, and Z, but now what can I do? How can I teach in this moment by applying it on myself? My child, my main role is that I'm a role model for this child. So whatever I do, this child is going to create that same model in his mind or her mind, right? So what model am I creating for this child? And I just have to do that. I just have to do, like you beautifully explained, that you're stressed out, you're driving, you're getting all agitated. You chose in that moment to do what would help you. And you also renewed your intention and you said, I'm going to do this. And I know my child is watching. He's going to learn from this. A lesson probably far bigger than a lesson that I can sit down and teach with him. And, they can color all they want. And you can explain the whole, you can do all of that. But what power lies in the moment? What power lies in the context of that situation that is created to you? That's hands-on experiential learning that goes far deeper. So you modeled it. You modeled it by saying, what did you say? Oh, Allah help me, Allah help me. What is that?
Yeah, I have this all every few days. I'm just like, Allah help me stay calm. Allah, because you can feel yourself like building up. You can feel yourself like you're about to, it's toddlers and preschoolers, and sometimes all your buttons are pressed, and sometimes we do lose it as well. Like, I'm not even pretending that I'm.
Yes, totally. Me too.
So many times you lose it.
We all go through it.
Even when when you lose it, you go back, you repair the situation if you need to. It's like what you said. Again, as you start to realize that you're modeling, or what you're doing and what they're observing is more important than any like worksheet that you're going to print off, or any like craft that you're going to set up and things like that. And I think, again, what you touched upon, because for me there's a huge difference between my first experience with a baby and my second one, alhamdulillah.
Mashallah.
And I think from like a mental health or a mindset perspective as well, like just that acceptance and the contentment, and even like, and I'm not just saying this because it's you, but doing the program and learning from people more experienced, that you do just sometimes have to let go, and you do have to slow down. Like for me, it was incredibly hard to slow down, and I wanted to know which curriculum I was going to do and which method, and I really wanted to have all these plans. And it's only since I've been able to like let go of literally everything and just accept there's time, and accept like living in the day, and not having all these plans, that you can enjoy what's going on, and you can actually create lessons from what's going on, because you're not just like, oh my goodness, I haven't done this, I haven't got, so you're not focused on that. And again, it's so important, because if you're always in this state of like, despair almost, or feeling kind of like everything's going wrong, or I'm not in control, it then affects your relationship with your child, and it also affects your relationship with Allah as well. Because if you think everything's like, if you think things are going wrong, you're less inclined to then, be making those intentions, or really in real time kind of trying to connect with Allah. But sometimes I have to just stop when I feel like my day's really going like that. Like I had a day like that this week, and I had to stop and say to myself, like, Allah doesn't make mistakes. So even if this day is going, down the drain, Allah doesn't make mistakes. Like this is the day that was planned for me. And I need to think about how I'm responding, and I need to think about why it's triggering me, like what's going on. And go inwards and just figure things out. And it's, inshallah, like you go from being constantly engulfed to then it, fluctuating, where you are intentional, you are in control, and you can take yourself out of feeling engulfed and overwhelmed. And I think it's just a journey, really.
And yes, we do go back and forth, and yes, certain phases of our life it will be even more challenging, but that is almost telling us where do we need to place the emphasis. And that's why I'm so passionate about the work that I do, because I know that especially when the kids are young, the parents are going through this phase where they feel that they need to be on top of everything. They feel this peer pressure, and they know less comparatively. Like a couple of years down the line, they will figure out stuff, but at that moment they don't know, and they end up damaging more than like just 2 days ago I was talking to my husband about this, and I was like, we've made so many mistakes with Salah, my older child. Like, subhanallah, it's Allah's grace that he took care of us, and look at where we are now. Like, subhanallah, we are just like a completely different strategy with the younger one. And also within the last few years also, so much has changed. I mean, I sometimes it's overwhelming, the gratitude that you feel for what Allah's guiding us to. But then when I am teaching, especially in the course, in the program, of course we do all the other stuff, like how do you teach math, and how do you teach this and that, and homeschooling methods. All of those things are there, and of course that's important. We want to use those strategies, but we don't want to get lost in that. We don't want to get engulfed in that. And same thing I see with the parenting trends. There's so much noise out there, like, okay, this trend, that trend, how do you become respectful towards the parents, and the scripts, all of that is all well-intentioned. But if you can't bring the focus back to yourself, your own unique experience in that moment, and pause and notice yourself. I mean, even that, if you're going to do compulsively, then those solutions are not going to work. It's really you in that moment, alone by yourself, and it's you who has to make that decision. And at that moment, what comes to the rescue is what you built in yourself. That's why this whole, this program is called Leaders. This community is called as Leaders Amongst Mothers. We want to really rise up to the occasion. Like, Allah has given us what we need. It's just that we keep looking outside of us for solutions. Allah's put those tools inside of us. Allah's put those tools even within our practice of our deen. So Salah, we talked about mindfulness, but actually Salah is more powerful than any meditation. And Salah is not meditation, by the way. Salah is actually far beyond what you can achieve through meditation. It just not just makes you mindful, it also orients you in the right direction, because we orient towards Allah. The kind of reminders we say in the Salah is something that really puts things in perspective. What am I really working for? Who is my Lord? He's Allah's 2 names, that we repeat in every Salah, when we recite Surah Fatiha. They remind us of His mercy, unending, overwhelming mercy, right? And that is the word that is also used for the womb. I mean, we are, if we really start to model, and I use this actually, just and we use this in our parenting a lot. Like, if Allah is describing, like, one of his most beautiful names, and he has beautiful names, and the ones that he chose for us to remember often kind of is the same as the word used for our womb, then in that is a huge lesson for us. So the thing that should dominate our experience with our children is not all this frantic pace and trying to do this and that. It's the presence, our presence with them. It's our mercy towards them. It's our, really being generous, like giving more than that's asked for. And I know when some parents will hear this, they'll be like, I'm already doing so much for my child. It's the point is not how much you do, it's the quality.
Yeah.
It's like, does it sink in? Yeah. Go ahead, Raeesa, what were you saying?
No, I was just agreeing. I was saying it's about how you do it. And I think probably, I know that it might be a final thing. I'm looking at the time. I have about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think once you again, it's like a shift, and it's when you have time to just take a step back. And I think I've discussed this with you before, like on the phone, that when you really start to realize that you're not raising kids for the sake of the kids, you're not homeschooling or parenting for the sake of parenting. So you can't get wrapped up and obsessed with any method, any approach, or any, to the extent that it's making you like unwell, or it's making you so stressed out that you can't sleep at night. Because that's not the end point isn't that thing. Like, the end point isn't even your child. You're doing all of these things for the sake of Allah. So it's like, if you know you've done the best that day and you're going to try your best tomorrow and the day after, that's all you can do. But you can only really accept that if you're focusing on Allah rather than the noise, because the noise will always tell you haven't done enough. Like, social media will always make you feel like you haven't done enough. But it's like, if you're parenting for social media, then you're never going to do enough. Like, you never are. Like, your posts are never going to be better than someone you're looking at, and whatever it is, like, there's always going to be something better, or something more organized, or something more shiny. But for us, like, we have to remind ourselves, like, we're not doing any of these things for the thing itself. Like, the child, the curriculum, anything is not intrinsically for that purpose. And then, you just stop and think, have I done my best today? Have I done my best in this, meltdown that took place? If I didn't, how can I improve better? Like, how can I do better next time for the sake of Allah? And then, like, you can find peace if you genuinely think, I did my best. Like, if you think you did your best for Allah, then it doesn't really matter, like, what social media, how many likes you got, or like if your curriculum wasn't printed on glossy paper. Like, it doesn't really like matter as much. And I think that's it's easy to say, like, it's easy for me to say that, and I have days where I'm like, criticizing myself about something I didn't do good enough or well enough. And that's when you lose that connection, or you lose that, like, focus, and the focus shifts. And it's natural, especially when you have so much to compare to, and you have so much to look at, and so many things telling you, like, what you should be doing and what you could be buying and where you could be going and stuff. So I think for me, probably as my parting thing, it would be just to, like, reconnect with Allah as much as possible. Like, I know I did that whole series on intentions and trying to make intentions for the smallest of things. But when you can make that habitual, and when you can do that on a really micro level, literally, on such a small level, it helps you to then have that kind of ihsan, and to keep Allah, like, at the forefront. Because if you're constantly making intentions, you're constantly thinking about Allah. And so it's an important habit, because it will take you out of being engulfed, rather than thinking, how can I stop being overwhelmed? What strategy shall I use? Like, what, therapist shall I see?
I've seen, and you're right about that. I've seen people almost do even the self-care and the not get engulfed by doing something that is again done compulsively. It's not done with the right intention. I mean, the intention may be good, but then the approach is not really in the right place. And I've seen that happen too. So And this idea of, like doing things, like it's only we know what our intention, right? Like if our intention to homeschool or to raise good kids as a parent is just to prove a point to ourselves. It may not even be for the world, but for ourselves, for our own deep seated need to validate ourselves. Then, it's easy to fall all over the place and, just kind of make mistakes left, right, and center. So it's really a lot of internal work that you have to do. And you have to keep doing that. It takes time. It's a huge investment on our part that, like, are we doing that work? Are we focusing on ourselves? And that's why it all begins with us. And whether or not we are willing to really address the elephant in the room, because most people, it's very easy to ignore that, right? Like it's easy to take a checklist or a curriculum recommendation and just start with it and just post a few pictures or share it with family, or just for your own self do a few things. Your child is nodding and they're learning. Oh, I'm validated for today until the next time, and then the next day again. And God forbid something comes in the way, and then everything goes crashing. And don't kids always do that? It's like they are always ready to derail our plans. So where is the problem? Like it's so important to acknowledge that you're doing this for some other reason. Your intention, and it's not like, sometimes I also feel that when we use the word intention, we think that it's just about a one-time thing. Actually, intention has to be revisited. Our intention, this job is not done, and it's a moment by moment thing. That's what helps you come in the present, actually, and see that, oh, wait a minute, why am I doing this? I remember distinctly, when my son was very young, at one point I was like, wait a minute, didn't I choose to homeschool because I wanted to preserve his love of learning? What happened to that? Like, why am I doing all this? And it looks like, I'm making progress, but I don't know if yeah.
I just have to cut you to, I have to say salam and cut off because my husband has a class now, so
Oh,
we're
yes.
switching
Oh,
channels.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'll still follow you and maybe come into the chat.
Come into the chat and answer questions if you can, and if you. Oh, okay, great, inshallah. So I will see you guys, see Raeesa later, but I'll be here to answer any questions. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Raeesa, for joining. It was a pleasure. Assalamu alaikum. Take care. Okay, so I'll be here and I'll be taking some questions. Anything? Yes, the session, Hifz is asking, Salam alaikum. This is great. MashaAllah, is this going to be recorded? Yes, it will be recorded. It will be here on IGTV on my page. And I also have a podcast where I will be uploading this. And I also have a Facebook page where you can find us, inshallah. Homemade teacher is saying, Ink and Blossom, mashallah, you're fabulous, so inspiring, mashallah. Yes, awesome. I feel like a hamster most days. Fiddle Leaf Figs is saying that. Yes, that happens. That has a tendency to happen. Anybody has any questions, I'll be here for the next 5 minutes and then I'll leave. So if you have any questions, you can type in. In the meantime, I would say that this topic is exhaustive, and that's why this is a series. So inshallah, next Thursday, I will be talking about self-care. Revisiting self-care, like what does it really mean to take care of ourselves, and how do we approach that, inshallah. So any ideas how to talk about mental health and emotions with an Islamic perspective to kids? Well, I think there is nothing un-Islamic about emotions and mental health. So you don't have to necessarily make it Islamic. It's if you look at the Prophet's life, we see so many examples of his intelligence, emotional intelligence, and how this is part of our tradition actually. If you think about it, like if we really want our kids to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we have to recognized that he wept, uh, he expressed his emotions. Um, he, even though in that culture that was something that people were not used to, but that was very much a part of his model. And so emotions are important and they have to be modeled. I think it just goes back to, are we modeling it before we can open our mouth and start explaining? Because some of these things can become very I mean, talking about it is good, but then what they really need to see is how you model those behaviors, how you show display your emotional intelligence, and how you put it into practice. So there is just so much in our tradition that we can go back to and look at and learn from. And when you see something like that, pause and discuss with your kids. So if you're reading Sira and you see a moment from the Prophet's life where you see an example of him displaying his emotional intelligence, or like the example of this man who came and said to the Prophet that oh, you're kissing these kids. He was surprised by that, and the Prophet ﷺ said that if Allah didn't remove mercy from your heart, then what can I say? So basically, he was saying that it's a sign of your emotion. You're expressing your emotion, and it's a good idea to do that. Same with the time when someone came and when his son Ibrahim passed away, and the Prophet was crying. Somebody came and said that, you are crying, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said that the tongue doesn't utter something that displeases Allah, but the eyes are expressing grief. That was his emotion, and he really modeled it all for us, mashallah. So yeah, explaining to the kids comes much after us modeling it. I hope that answers your question. Somebody's asking, Assalamu alaikum, what are your thoughts on sending kids to after homeschooling of all primary years because they want to try? Oh, definitely. I think there are no hard and fast rules. There are situations in which you may want to use schools. I mean, I don't personally believe that homeschooling works all the time or is for all people in all situations. It just depends. It does demand a lot from the family. So, if you need to get help, you can get. But if you're doing it just because your kids want to try, I think there is a lot that needs to be explored in that question. Like, for example, how old are your kids? I mean, do they have while they can have a say in things, but then you are at the end of the day responsible for them, and it's our job to not just like, let's say they just want to eat sugar all day long and it's not good for them, then it's our job to kind of get that point across and help them see that yeah, we could explore this, but then what's your reason? And kind of like really take it apart and explore it from different angles. Yes, you definitely want to keep the relationship intact. So if the choice is if going to sending them to school means that you get to hold on to that relationship, and it's come to the point where it's that's gonna put a dent on the relationship. And I mean like a dent, like a serious dent, not just like, oh, mom's saying no and displeases me. So if it's about that, then you can negotiate and kind of come to a conclusion. But again, remember that you're responsible for them, and you very well have a right to make some decisions, but then you have to do it keeping a lot of things in mind. And if they're not liking homeschooling because of some reasons, then you can even revisit that and see how you can make it more appealing to them. Or you can give them, if you're concerned that if they go back to school, it's not the ideal thing for them, then maybe you can negotiate and figure out, like, maybe we can try it out for 3 months and revisit this decision. I mean, there's many ways to solve that problem. And it really depends on your personal circumstance. Abdur Rahman Abdi is saying, how can I teach my kids to leave the animals alone? We're visiting our relatives in Kenya and they have chickens and cats, and my kids are so interested in them, they won't leave them alone. They want to play with them, but they give them a hard time. Yeah, you just talk to them about, your the if they're bothering the animals, then obviously you can talk about the rights of animals, and um, and if they're not really bothering them, they're just playing with them, and yeah, I guess you can just try to set some limits around how much time they can spend doing that and things like that. It's really you can solve that problem creatively. I think it's my 5 minutes are up. I will get going. Raeesa has a comment. Alhamdulillah, so many examples from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life and how he responded and felt during difficult times. Share these stories with children. Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's the best way to approach it. Okay.